Hello. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Lainey Rose, and I'm the events coordinator here at East City Bookshop. It is a delight to be with you all this evening. Thank you so much for joining us both in person and virtually through our live stream. We love the accessibility that virtual events provide, and we are also delighted to be able to welcome so many of you back to the store to participate face-to-face. First up, some housekeeping details. Number one, we appreciate you wearing your mask while you're seated at the event and in the signing line. Masks are optional while shopping and browsing, but we've elected to continue to ask our audience to wear them while we're all seated closely together for an extended period of time. So thank you for doing your part. Number two, if you need a restroom, it is upstairs past the cash registers and the greeting cards. Number three, if you're watching from home and experiencing any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat. My colleague Emma is monitoring that to help if necessary. And in the chat, let us know where you're streaming in from. Let us know what you're reading. Just put all of your excitement in the chat. Number four, we will have time for questions tonight, both in person and virtual attendees. So even if you're watching via Zoom, you can participate. Please put those questions in the Q&A feature so that Emma will see them and can ask on your behalf. And finally, and most importantly, if you need to purchase a copy of Mistakes Were Made, Something to Talk About, or Queerly Beloved, we have copies available and we'd be happy to help you out. All of our copies are upstairs and can be purchased before getting into the signing line. And now the reason we're here, the MILF, the legend, the myth. If there is something to talk about, wink, wink, it is Meryl Wilsner's Mistakes Were Made. Meryl wrote the first sapphic adult romance I ever read, and I knew that they would be a favorite author for life. When I first heard whispers about this book on Twitter, I heard it by its lovingly granted nickname, the MILF book. That alone immediately grabbed my attention, and the more I learned about it, the more I had to get my hands on it. When Cassie Klein goes to an off-campus bar to escape her school's family weekend, she isn't looking for a hookup. It just happens. Buying a drink for a stranger turns into what should be an uncomplicated, amazing one-night stand. But then the stranger rolls around and her friend drags her along to meet her mom, the hot older woman Cassie slept with. Erin Bennett comes to family weekend to get closer to her daughter, not to have a one-night stand with a college senior. But in her defense, she hadn't known that Cassie was a student when they met. To make matters worse, Erin's daughter brings Cassie to the breakfast next morning. And despite Erin's better judgment, she and Cassie get along just as well in the day as they did last night. Turn page. What should be a one-time fling quickly proves impossible to ignore, and soon Cassie and Erin are sneaking around. Worst of all, they start to realize they have something real, but is being honest about the love between them worth the cost? By the book, find out. Our author of the evening is Meryl Wilsner, who writes happily ever afters for queer folks who love women. They are the author of Something to Talk About and Mistakes Were Made. Born in Michigan, Meryl lived in Portland, Oregon, and Jackson, Mississippi before returning to the Mitten State. Some of Meryl's favorite things include all four seasons, button-down shirts, the way giraffes run, and their wife. And joining them in conversation is Susie Dumond, a queer writer from Little Rock, Arkansas. She's the author of Queerly Beloved and the forthcoming novel, Looking for a Sign. She is a senior contributor at Book Riot, where she writes a monthly horoscopes and book recommendations column, as well as various quizzes, book lists, and bookish news pieces. Currently, she's probably making cupcakes at her home in Washington, D.C. with her wife, Mary, her dog, Waffles, and their cat, Maple. Thank you all for being here tonight. Please welcome our authors of the evening.
Up means on, yes.
Testing, yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk with Meryl about this incredibly hot MILF book. Can you please start with telling us how you describe the book? I mean, obviously it's the MILF book.
It is the MILF book. Yeah, also, thank you for talking with me. I'm so excited. Thank you all for being here. Mistakes Were Made is about a college senior who has a one-night stand with an older woman at a bar and later learns that that woman is one of her best friend's moms. My favorite thing about that pitch is like, you're either with me or you're like, no, I'm good. I will not be reading that one. And I really appreciate that, that you just know that from the pitch alone.
It definitely puts it all out there. That's true. So my other question for you here is, if somebody's sitting down to read Mistakes Were Made, what do you think of as the ideal reading setting for this book? Where do you want to picture them like really living their best life reading your book?
Probably not in public. I think is the main thing. I mean, you're welcome to read it in public. It just might be a choice. I wrote some of it in public, which was definitely a choice. I wrote some of it at work one day, and then my boss needed my computer. I was like, that's fine. I'm just gonna put this in like behind. I didn't minimize it for some reason. I just like clicked onto something else. And then my boss was like, why do you have all these windows open? And just hit minimize on everything. And it like popped up.
My
and
heart is racing just hearing this story.
Like it very definitely said like, touch yourself, like at the top of this. And I spent the entire day just like, and like, they just like minimize. And so I spent the whole day being like, when are they going to call me into the office and fire me? Because they're obviously doing it. But apparently they did not notice. I've left that job so I can tell the story now. But yeah, so maybe public is just not it. Other than that, really, you do you. I'm whatever works for anyone.
Okay, I respect it. So your first book, Something to Talk About, is also fantastic, also queer and wonderful, but quite different in several ways from this novel. Can you talk about the difference between those two books and maybe a little bit of why they're a different reading experience? Yeah,
so Something to Talk About is the slowest slow burn that I could possibly write. Spoiler alert, but I do think it's 97% on the Kindle when they sleep together, the one sex scene that's in it. Mistakes were made. I always film my unboxing videos and then I'm embarrassed and think I look stupid and I never post them. But I did post the one part of the Mistakes Were Made unboxing video where I wasn't intentionally opening to anything. I just wanted to look at the book and I opened up and I literally like, well, we're on page 7 and they're fucking. So yeah, so very different in terms of number of sex scenes, speed in which we get to them, all of that sort of thing. Similar, obviously, in an age gap. And in a way similar in the slow burn side of like feeling side of things. I tend to say that I write idiots to lovers. I write people who just can't figure it out, either don't think they have feelings or won't admit it, or don't think the other person could possibly be interested in them or anything like that. And I love to write that in dual point of view. So you're like mad at both of them because they're both being like, and you're like, you're clearly in love. So yeah, similar in that respect. It wasn't necessarily like a choice. I actually originally wrote this draft prior to finishing Something to Talk About. So it's not like I did one and then decided like I was gonna yeet myself in the opposite direction. It just sort of, it was what worked for the character. Like in Something to Talk About, they never could have slept together in the first chapter. Just that's not what would have worked for the character. So that's just what happened.
Yeah, and they're with different publishers too. So Something to Talk About was the first queer romance from Berkeley.
It was the first queer female romance in print. Okay. So they had published an ebook that I cannot remember the name of right now. I will find it on my Twitter and retweet it if I remember to do that later tonight. But they had published a like digital only, but yeah, they had never published a queer female romance in print. And Something to Talk About was the first, which was great in many ways, slightly embarrassing because it came out in 2020. So like you should have been here already. Mm-hmm. But also like there was no, you weren't there for me to say, hey, Susie, like, what's the experience like when you publish a queer female romance? Or like, there was just not really a community at that point. Which is not to say there weren't people writing FF, like, especially in indie, like publishing, that people have been writing this forever. But sort of mainstream, like Big 5, Big 4, whatever is left. It was, there's nobody there. And so it's really nice now to just have so many other authors who I can be in community with and who are doing sort of the similar things. And also, hopefully, I guess, who I can like also help, feel like I feel, I guess, a little bit like a veteran in that regard. Because I want to do everything I can to get as many, FF stories out there. And yeah, so that was with Berkeley. This is with St. Martin's Griffin. And I'm thrilled to be with Griffin. It's a really good fit, and that's where I've sold them a couple more books, so I have more books coming out from them as well.
Put a pin in that because we're definitely going to talk about that later. I have questions about that as well. Okay, so when we talk about like the steam level in romance, first of all, I've heard people saying that they really hate the term steam in reference to romance. So whatever you want to call the sexiness radar, whatever, however you want to rate these books, like, do you think that there's an ideal amount of steam in romance? Do you think that like it's for different audiences? Like how do you kind of compare books that have very little actual like steam versus ones that have a lot, page 4?
Well,
So-
I think they can be compared, but I don't think that it's a competition. Like I don't think that there's an ideal, like this is the way it should be. Like I said, with something to talk about, it couldn't have had this many sex scenes. It couldn't have been this high heat. And this just, if for this to be a slow burn, it would have been a totally different story. So it's just sort of whatever works for the book each author wants to write and the characters that they want to write. Especially in queer romance, I think I will more likely lean toward more. But in romance in general, I think I would be more likely to lean toward more, just because there's such a stigma about pleasure and sex and also like romance novels as a whole, that they can still be sexy and still matter. They're not trashy, all of that sort of thing that unfortunately a lot of us grew up learning and still actually hear. I don't know if you've ever had this. I never had it myself, but I have some author friends who just have like terrible experiences with people who either their coworkers or sometimes even their friends who like will make fun of them and their books, and oh my God, look at this type of book and look at this cover and there's a naked person on this cover and things like that. That's just like horrible to be telling someone who's like, I put so much work into writing this book and you're like standing here calling it trashy or a guilty pleasure or whatever to my face. So in that, like, for that reason, I'm like, let's lean to more sex scenes as a sort of fuck you to those people.
I love a good fuck you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But whatever, like, it's really, I don't think there's an ideal. I think it comes down to whatever's right for the characters.
Yeah, absolutely. So something else that I really loved in this book is we have Erin, who lives in
New Hampshire,
while Cassie is in college, which is like a bit of a ways away.
The college is in Virginia. If anyone's read it, is that right? Yeah. It's Virginia or North Carolina. It's one of those.
Virginia sounds right.
I think she's from North Carolina and the college is in Virginia.
Yes. So there's a distance here. And we all know that in real life, long distance relationships, it can be really challenging to, like build tension and like feel like you're progressing the relationship and, finding ways to make it romantic and interesting. And I think that like, it's hard enough to do that in real life. How did you do it in fiction?
It was fun. And I think that it is something that lends itself to why the characters why it is idiots to lovers, why they sort of don't figure things out, because it's like, obviously we're not dating. Like, we live however many hundreds of miles from each other and you're my daughter's friend. Like, clearly we couldn't be dating. So it's easier for them to not realize like, oh, we're sexting and then having phone sex and we're, I don't want to say everything that they do because I think there's fun stuff that I want everyone to discover if they haven't yet. But yeah, it was fun to play around with that, and it's different than any other book that I've written in that regard, just because you don't hit, you can't hit the same beats. You can't hit that sort of, oh, someone reaches up somewhere and a strip of skin shows and they can't look away and things like that when you're like completely far away from each other, living in completely different states. So that was fun to play with and find sort of new ways to do that.
Yeah. So something else is that we get this dual perspective, and obviously it's a MILF romance. So we know there's an age gap going on here. It's about 20 years. So how did you kind of focus? How did you change the maturity level of those different perspectives and deal with the different maturity levels of the characters together?
Yeah, I think what's important, especially in this specific book, is that they met as equals first. This isn't something where Erin meets Cassie as her daughter's friend. This is something where she meets Cassie, a consenting adult. They have a great time. Oops, basically. And I think that's really important for, at least for this specific story, because she doesn't ever see her, even when she tries to see her as you're just a kid, like it doesn't really come off right. It doesn't work for her. And she realizes that that's not how she's seeing her. And she's just playing that up because she knows that's sort of what she's supposed to do. And so I think with this, with Mistakes Were Made rather than with Something to Talk About, like Something to Talk About was very heavily focused on the power dynamics because it's a boss assistant relationship as well as an age gap. There was, the older woman was very rich compared to the younger woman and all of that sort of thing. And so it was very important to work out those power dynamics first. Whereas with Mistakes Were Made, obviously, yes, there's power dynamics, but as I said, like they meet as equals. And so it's almost, I feel like the age gap part of it is less focused on, it's very focused on the, like, you're my daughter's friend, rather than specifically like, I think it's 17 years. It might be 16 years. I don't remember their ages in the same way I don't remember where they go to school. But yeah, they like, that is not, it seems like that should be a focus, but it's just not a focus because they have always seen each other as equals. And Cassie is mature in some ways that, knows some things about life that Aaron still has to learn, and Aaron knows plenty about life that Cassie still has to learn. And so they sort of complement and help each other in that way. Even though obviously they are in very different parts of their lives end up fitting together.
Absolutely. And so when it comes to the like taboo aspect of it too, I think you set such a challenge for yourself and how you were going to write this thing that people come to with so many preconceived notions. And I think something that I think you did really successfully in the book is finding a way to both have the audience deal with their own preconceived notions about what's happening here, and also for those characters to be like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, this seems like a bad idea. So how did you deal with that kind of like trying to get everybody in the characters and the readers to come around to this romance?
I think I definitely focus on the characters. I think that this is a book that I was like, some people aren't going to read it. Like, that's fine. This is not going to be some people's thing, and I'm okay with that. That's what I liked from the tagline. What you're getting yourself into. And if you haven't figured it out by then, from the first chapter, you figured it out. Whereas, like, just for instance, with Something to Talk About, I always was like, it's a slow burn, because I don't want people going into it thinking like, oh, it's a slow burn. That means they kiss at 50%. Like, no, it doesn't in this one, because I do want people to be prepared for what they read. Because there's way too many good books out there to waste your time reading something that you're not going to like. So in that regard, I don't feel like I'm glad that you think I prepared the audience for it, I guess. But it wasn't necessarily something that I went into intentionally being like, okay, how can we make sure people are okay with this? It was more like, some people are going to be okay with this, some people aren't. Let's make the characters okay with it. It was, let's tell the story and it'll find its people.
Yeah. And I think that's genius, because if you had been trying to specifically address the reader, then it would have felt a little preachy and being like, stop judging these characters.
Yeah, for sure.
But having it through the characters being like, I'm judging myself, but like, why am I doing that?
Yeah.
This is something that makes me happy. So it was brilliant.
Well, thank you.
Just a big fan. Big fan. Okay. So speaking of taboos, you've had, a power dynamic taboo. You've had an age gap taboo. Are there any taboos that you'd like to tackle in the future?
I always like to say that when I love taboo or forbidden romance, but like not when it means that one of them's 16. Like, I always clarify. I'm like, by the way, not that. That's gross. Just to be clear. As for, I mean, that's something that I'm sure I will get into a lot more, because my favorite types of relationships to write are two people who like are very aware they should not be doing this. Like, this is a terrible idea, but they want each other, or they love each other so much that they can't stop themselves. And so, age gap is sort of really easily lends itself to that. But that is sort of at its core what I like best. So yeah, I'm sure that I will find more of these. I'm kicking around an idea of a siblings like X. And sort of siblings X who, the golden child was always supposed to be with this other perfect person, and the main character is a huge disaster. The like perfect siblings X is something that I will write at some point. I don't know if it's going to work for the book that I'm trying to make it work for, but it will happen sometime.
Excellent. Something to look forward to. So I'm going to say, speaking of MILFs, because we have been the whole time.
Always. When am I
speaking
not?
of MILFs.
Yeah.
So I was telling you this in the back room, but I was having a conversation with some friends last night preparing for this, and I was excited about it. And we were talking about who our favorite MILFs were, and it became a struggle because when you get down to what is a MILF, what makes a MILF? Is it anyone who is a mom can be a MILF? Is it someone who is old enough to be your mother? Do you have to have a specific kind of mother energy in order to be a MILF? What are your thoughts?
As my friend Christina Tucker would say, a MILF can be anything. I think that it is a state of mind, in part, both for the, I was gonna say like the MILF and the MILFy. I don't know what the I had an event in New York on Thursday with Casey McQuiston, and they also asked me like who are our favorite MILFs, and we were talking about it. And then in the signing line, Casey suggested that everyone, and you can all feel free to do this as well, come tell me your favorite MILF when I'm gonna sign your book.
That's your chance. Start thinking about it.
Yeah,
keep a list
to
on your
prepare
phone.
you. And somebody said Sandra. Oh, and I was like, oh, does she have kids? I don't know. And they said she has the energy. And I was like, you're right. That is valid. And I support you in that. I still don't know if she has children or not. But yeah, no, she counts as a MILF. That's fine. So I do think that it is sort of that energy more than, I don't think you gotta have kids to be a MILF. That's just like maybe an extra level. Maybe there's different stages.
Bonus
what are
points.
Your thoughts on this? I want to know. What did you and your friends like come up with?
We didn't really come up with a hard and fast rule. We thought that you, as the MILF book author, could
oh
really
my God,
tell us the
I'm
guidance.
so honored.
I
love that this is my legacy.
I feel like at this age in my life, because so many of my friends are moms, it can't just be like you have a kid, so you're a MILF, because
fair.
Like there are people who have been hot their whole lives and like they didn't just, I don't know. It makes me feel a little weird.
Also, like for their favorite MILF, nobody said Beyonce, who like clearly gorgeous, like has children, but I feel like Beyonce is like a whole different level. Like doesn't have the MILF energy because she's Beyonce.
Yes.
So it doesn't quite count. So yeah, so it's definitely not just like you have kids. Like there's something to it.
I think to me it has to be, the age gap has to be a part of it. It has to be somebody significantly older than myself in order for me to call them a MILF. That's kind of what I feel down on, but I don't think that everybody necessarily needs to feel that way.
I don't know. Yeah, I understand the point of view. I don't know that I agree with it. Yeah. For me, for you, everyone, you do you. What a MILF is, whatever a MILF is to you.
You have to sit down and have a personal conversation with yourself.
Maybe journal a little bit.
Yes.
Talk to your therapist. Figure it out.
Yes. So, I mean, on that topic, who are your favorite MILFs?
One of my favorite MILFs is in attendance tonight. I bullied Ashley Herring Blake until she came and joined us this evening. I call her one of my favorite MILFs in part because she gets embarrassed when I do, so it's fun. But also originally when Casey asked me, I forgot to say Lucy Liu, and I feel very terrible about it. So let me put Lucy Liu out there as well. I said Hannah Waddingham from Ted Lasso. Is
anybody watching Drag Race UK? They did like a preview that she's going to be a guest judge.
Well, now week. I am watching Drag Race UK.
Like, they just showed 1/2 second clip of her, and I was like, "That's the hottest thing I've ever seen in my." And she's sitting there.
She is. I realized that I could, for one of my future books, that I could cast her as a main character, and suddenly, like with this book that I was like, "Oh, I want to write this book someday." As I'm like, I want to write it next, immediately, please.
Wait, sorry. Also on that topic, have you seen Hocus Pocus 2?
I haven't yet.
Okay,
I know she's in it.
She's in it. Yeah, it's important that you know.
Yes, I am aware. Who else did Lena Headey is also very much one, which like I'm sure everyone knows as Cersei, but what's more important is she was Luce in Imagine Me and You. If you haven't seen it, go see it. You're welcome. Who are some of your favorite MILFs?
I thought about it, and I think my number one is Jean Smart.
Fair.
And it changed when I started watching Hacks and saw her being mean, and suddenly I was like, ooh, I don't know. It was something about the mean Jean Smart specifically.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. One of my friends said Michelle Obama, and I had a similar Beyonce reaction. I was like, I don't think that I'm allowed to feel that way about her because she's like so special.
Yeah.
She like
I mean, I
radiates.
can see it though. I can see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly. This is where are the
It's
lines.
whatever it is to
Where
you.
are the lines?
A MILF can be anything.
Yeah, yeah. So many feelings. So tell us a little bit about those future books you were mentioning.
Yes, I would really like to finish the one that I'm currently working on that was definitely supposed to be done before I went on book tour for this one. My next book is called Cleat Cute. It is about two female soccer players who are both trying to make the national team for the World Cup. And they realize that maybe cooperation works better than competition. And maybe there's room for both of them.
It does take a team.
It does take a team. It'll be done someday.
I'm so excited about
We
that because
think.
I just recently got into women's soccer. It just like happened all at once. I've never cared about a single sport in my entire life. And I went to like 2 games last year for the Washington Spirit.
Beautiful.
And then they won the championship. And I was like, wow, I can root for teams and they win. Like, what?
Playoffs are tomorrow if anyone wants to watch.
Yes. And the NWSL championship game is on October 29th in DC. And
I didn't realize it was in DC.
it's gonna be great.
Nice.
I don't even care who's gonna be there. I care about women's soccer enough now that I'm like, all the teams, I
love that for
care.
you. We
So I
actually
cannot wait.
the last time I was in DC was the week after I got married. We came specifically to come to an NWSL game because some of my favorite MILFs who were not MILFs at the time were on the Spirit, but they're not anymore.
Ashlyn
Harris and Allie Krieger. Yes.
Oh, those came up as MILF potentials, and
Absolutely.
they were.
I can't believe that I didn't think about them. Honestly, the fact that I
Next
just
event.
came up with it. But yeah, we came for a weekend specifically just to go watch a soccer game. So yeah, I'm very excited about Cleat Cute.
I'll do anything for a galley of that, by the way. Just like
It really has to be
Say the word.
finished before. So, well, don't let me get ahead
I mean,
of myself.
I'll wait, but not very long.
So yeah, so that is my next one. But I have like a whole spreadsheet full of ideas that my agent put together. She asks her clients like, hey, tell me everything that you have every idea you're considering and like how far along you are on it. She sends out a little survey saying that every year. And the first year I went, okay, strap in, and wrote 17, I think, ideas in it. And then it got converted into a spreadsheet. And I've been keeping that spreadsheet updated. So some of them are, at the bottom, there's one where it's a glass blower and their assistant, because I watched the Blown Away show and I was like, I should write that. That's the entire idea. That's all I have. There's nothing else. And then so like
the heat puns write themselves,
right? Like, oh my God, and they're sweating, and anyway. But yeah, that's the whole idea. That's all I have. And then there's others that are like, I have, once the characters are named is when I'm really in trouble. So yeah, there's other ones that I have character names, and in the spreadsheet I add things to it. So that one that once I realized I could put Hannah Waddingham in it and then moved it way up, that one has names. Characters have names. But so my agent Patrice sent out the survey again saying, hey, tell me all, and I was like, oh, were we not? I've just been keeping the spreadsheet updated. Like, it is fully updated. And she was like, okay, we're good, then you don't have to fill this out. But yeah, so I have a whole bunch more ideas, but really need to focus on Cleat Cute so I can finish it, because every time I'm sitting here talking about what I'm working on next, I'm like, oh my God, I love this idea, I love this idea, I love this idea. So I have definitely more stories in me than I'm ever going to be able to actually write and get out there, but they're all going to be gay, so that's what matters.
Oh my God, I'm about to go on a wild tangent. We have a few minutes, so I'm allowed. I recently was like reading a BuzzFeed article that was about a Reddit list of straight men talking about what women writers specifically get wrong about writing men characters.
Terrifying.
It was terrifying. And like on the
it's like
one
we
hand,
don't think about things. Okay.
Yeah, like we don't know our friends' names. And you're like,
it was wild.
So reading that, I genuinely was like, could I write a compelling story about a straight man and a straight cis man? Like I couldn't. I think that I am capable, but I could not come up with a concept that compelled me at all.
Exactly. I was like, I feel like you can, but why? Like, there's enough of those.
Look at this character. He doesn't think.
He doesn't know his friends' names. Isn't he great? Like, that was a wild article.
Okay, I'm glad you read it too. I had so many feelings. Okay. So when we're talking about your next projects, and about this project and your past projects, can you talk a little about your writing process? What comes to you first? What came to you first for this novel?
Well, so this novel started out as fan fiction. It was supposed to be just that first chapter, a smutty little one shot. I don't say the fandom, they killed a lesbian, they don't deserve credit. Y'all can probably figure it out from that. But yeah, so it was supposed to just be a one shot of fanfic and be done with it. So like this process is different than most of my other books and processes. And then my friends were like, what if this happens? Like, what if this happens? I think there was specifically a request for shower sex. And I was like, well, check that off the list. So they kept giving me ideas. And it literally went from the little one shot where first chapter ends with like, please call me Aaron. Wasn't that a fun little story that I never have to think about again, to now we have the MILF book. So this process was very different than most of my books.
Did you ever pause in that process and be like, why did I write myself into this like very difficult corner to achieve an HEA?
Well, so this was also originally one point of view. So it was all Cassie. And in revising it to be dual point of view, I was like, oh, all these things that I just made Erin do. Like, why is she sleeping with her daughter's friend? I had to give her a reason. Whereas that was not my business when I was writing just Cassie's point of view. I don't know why, and I don't care. So that was definitely difficult. Yeah, that I feel like that took the most work of revising it, is being like, I have to make this make sense. But yeah, for most of my ideas, as I said, I keep track. Before I had the spreadsheet, it was like a note on Notes app in my computer, in my phone, of just any ideas that I have. And this is what my brain does, like just on a daily, regular basis. Like I went skiing last winter for the first time in 15 years, maybe. And I was like, oh my God, I could write a whole series. We could have lift operators. We could have like professional skiers coming back from injury. We could have, like kids who have started skiing. We can have somebody who works in the ski lodge who, makes hot chocolate for people and always gives this person extra, like just literally just on a chairlift with a friend. I'm spouting these off to him and he's like, cool, you weirdo, but okay. So yeah, so sort of taking that things that my brain just does naturally, and whenever something sort of particularly grabs me, adding it into the spreadsheet, and then we go from there. And so I generally get the dynamic, the two people. Every once in a while I might get just like one character and I'm like, I want to write this type of character, but I don't know who they're gonna be with, but most of the time it's like this person, the glass blower and their assistant, foster mom of dogs and the vet. Like it's very specific like that. And then yeah, it's just sort of I flail at all of my friends. Like I used to say I wasn't a plotter because I don't like write things down before I write. I don't have a big outline before I write. But then I realized that what I do is I just plot by screaming at my friends about my ideas in all caps, usually, because it's usually via text. And just being like, and when I did something to talk about before the characters had names, I was like, and then boss lady does this, and assistant lady does this. And I have those texts that I can go back and look at, which is very fun. And so, yeah, so I just yell at my friends until they care about, because then they can yell at me to continue writing because I've made them care about the characters. But yeah, so that's sort of how I end up plotting things, is just by getting really excited and shouting about it. And usually sort of the big moments are and then I go back and fill. That's my problem with Cleat Cute, is I wrote all the big fun moments and now I have to go back and connect them, and I'm like, but I already wrote the fun stuff. So it's just I'm doing it. It's just taking a little longer than I wanted to, which I think is also my process is taking longer than I wanted it to at all times. That's how I handle things. But yeah, it goes from there. It's just me getting excited about an idea that naturally just drops into my head for absolutely no reason, and going from there. And some of them in that spreadsheet do get named and pulled out, and eventually a synopsis maybe gets written and we go from there. And some of them just I really don't think I'm writing the glass blower and the assistant. I'm sorry if I got anyone excited about that. God, it would take so much work. I know nothing about glass blowing at all. But so, some of them will just stay ideas, and some of them sort of grow and change, and I see where they take me.
It's amazing. Okay, I think I'm gonna ask one more question and then we can go to audience questions, which we have both virtual and we have in person. So we'll try and repeat any of the questions that you ask so that the folks on virtual can hear them. But first, can you tell us about any recent or upcoming books that you're really excited about, perhaps done by a certain Ashley Herring Blake?
By a certain Milf. I feel like people have probably already read Delilah Green Doesn't Care because it's an amazing and wonderful book. Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. I got to get it right. Comes out in November. It's even better than Delilah, in my opinion. Everyone has their own opinion. Mine's right, but so definitely look forward to that one. I'm actually doing the launch event at Parnassus in Nashville. It will be very fun. Yes. So those two are ones to look out for. I always talk about my favorite romance of all time, Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. It's dedicated to me, and someone else, but also me. That Anita's book was the first book that I read. Well, the first adult romance, I guess, that I read with a non-binary main character who uses they them pronouns, which is me, but I didn't know that was a thing you could do, even though it's me. So that's very special to me, as well as being truly amazing. Anita has also written, I think they're called the Moonies novellas, which is based around Lainey's pumping their fist in the back, based around a fake karaoke bar in Portland, and little, very cute little novellas about different characters within and around the bar. They're great as well. What else do I need to? Your book, obviously. I'm trying to think of other. I did not read very well this year. I kept telling myself, oh, I'll read that when I finish writing Cleat Cute. Still not done. So maybe at the end of the year, I will read a ton. I'm really looking forward to Just As You Are by Camille Kellogg.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Have you had a chance?
I haven't read it. I have it, and I haven't read it.
I'm excited for you to read it.
Everyone is like, oh my God, this is so good. And I'm like, so I think that might be maybe first on my list when I finish Cleat Cute.
I don't think it's out until May, so you have some time.
It's not out till
to be ahead of the curve. But everyone else,
it's really good.
Excited now for May. It's a queer Pride and Prejudice retelling, and it's really fun.
In young adult, Jake Maya Arlo wrote How to Excavate a Heart, which comes out in November, maybe 1st, which is so good. I generally this year I have done so little reading. It's either 6 months of no reading, or I inhale a book in 24 hours, and that's what I did with How to Excavate a Heart. It's great. It's a Jewish Christmassy rom-com. And speaking of Jewish Christmassy rom-coms, Seasons of Love, I think maybe just one season of love, by Helena. Do you know Helena Greer? You don't know. Okay. Also came out when Mistakes Were Made came out. And that is lovely as well.
That's excellent. I hope everybody was updating their TBRs mentally, if not physically. Okay. So audience questions. What questions do you have for Meryl? They don't bite. Don't be scared.
Don't all jump in at once, y'all. Do we have any? Oh.
I feel like you must have been under a lot of pressure as to trade published queer writers writing these stories. How have you managed that?
So the question was, how have we both managed pressure as being sort of one of the early writers of trade published queer female romances? Probably not well. I really was just really constantly trying to find other writers and queer female romance writers to talk to be I don't know what I knew nothing about publishing when something to talk about, when I first sold it, nothing at all. And it's kind of an industry that tells authors as little as possible, gives you as little information as humanly possible, so that you don't know anything, so you don't know what you can ask for and what you can get. So it's really helpful to have author friends who have been further along on the journey than you are. And so that is partially why I sort of try to be that for other people now. Because I try to share as much sort of data as possible because the industry doesn't like to give it to us. But in terms of like, I don't know, the pressure, I was like, I mean, I knew so little about publishing. I was like, oh my God, something to talk about. It's probably going to hit lists. I'm going to be so famous. I'm going to quit my date. No, like none of that's going to happen. People always say to you when you are a writer who hasn't published yet, that sort of once you start publishing, like writing becomes a job. So your relationship with it changes. It becomes your job. And I was very much like, that won't happen to me though, because I love writing so much, which is true. I do. But yeah, no, it's a job. So
You can love something and it can still be a job.
Yeah. So that has definitely shifted things. So I don't think I recognized necessarily that I had the pressure. But I just didn't know anything at the time. So just being a himbo, I guess, is helpful.
I was very lucky because my editor, Katie Nishimoto, is queer and came into Penguin Random House to like really champion queer stories, and is also publishing Just As You Are by Camille Kellogg, which is why I got the early look. And Katie has just been like, she's been the person in between for me who like protects me from any stupid questions that I might have to face from other people on my team. And I mean, she's just phenomenal. I could talk all day about how much I love her. So that has been incredible. Also, author communities are such a huge thing. And I was lucky to debut in 2022 when there are a ton of queer debut authors with me. And so we've gotten to kind of enjoy this ride together and commiserate about the harder parts of it. I can't imagine in 2020, it was not quite the same for traditional publishing.
Well, and it was also, I mean, it was May of 2020. So we hadn't figured out what we were doing yet in terms of the pandemic. And like something to talk about got like great accolades, was a Library Reads top pick. All of the libraries were closed. Like you could not go, it was on the Indie Next list. All of the indie bookstores were closed. Like I couldn't go see my book on a shelf. I don't even know when the first time, I want to say it was maybe September, that I could like go see it rather than like at the store that I went to sign books at. So yeah, it was a very different experience in that regard. But yeah, no, having not just the community, but specifically like the queer community, and having like a queer editor, I now have a queer agent, and it's just so helpful to sort of have the people who get it, who you don't have to explain things to. That is I don't know, help. I can't even explain how helpful it is. Because you have somebody who understands and either has been there before or at least gets it. That now in 2022, like it's so wonderful to look around and realize like, oh, there are more queer stories, and specifically like queer stories about women that I can read, like than I've read this year. I've not been able to read all of them, and that is so great, as opposed to like something to talk about and me being like, is anyone else here? Someone come hold my hand. So yeah, it's just we've definitely moved in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, something that's weird for me is that your book has two like femme looking people on the cover. So it's pretty apparent what people are getting into. My book is called Queerly Beloved and has a big rainbow on the cover. So like sometimes it's a little weird to be like, I was at a Barnes and Noble in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the book is set, sitting in the front door, and like people would walk in and be like, and like look terrified and just like try to avoid eye contact because they like figured out what was going on. So like that's kind of an interesting experience, but that was something that I wanted it to be visibly queer. I didn't want it to be one of those like, oops, surprise, they're queer when you start reading it.
I think there's value in both, especially obviously in young adult. Like there needs to be sort of discreet queer stories that kids who might not otherwise be able to get their hands on can. But yeah, I do like being like very explicit, like it's gay, like that's what it is. There's two women on the cover, their legs are touching, it's real gay. But I do also like I don't know, like Chef's Kiss has is a non-binary character and a female character, and so maybe looking at the cover you might think it's MF. And I do also like the idea of being like, haha, you thought I was writing about cisheads, but I'm not. I think that's just fun. But yeah, I do think that most of mine will be fairly obvious, but this cover is, I adore this cover. They gave it to me in other color options, which were the bisexual flag, and it was so hard to say no to. I think this cover is right and it looks perfect, but like it's like this is so difficult for me not to pick like the purple, pink, blue one. I managed. But yeah, that's I want all of my books to be really queer and very visibly so.
I love that. You have a question?
First, we need to see that cover. Also, this release a week has obviously been very different from the first one.
So the question was, this release week has been very different than Something to Talk About, and how am I feeling? Tired, mostly. I had an event Thursday in New York. I started in Michigan, which is where I'm from, and then on Tuesday, and then I went to New York for Thursday, and now I'm here, and then I'm going to go to Chicago. Thursday night, it was so much fun. Had a really great time. Went out with my pub team afterward. It was fantastic. And then made like big plans in the morning. We're going to go to this store, and then we're going to go to this store, and then we're going to eat this food, and like did not get out of bed till 10:30. Barely like made it to one store and then barely made our train. Just it's more exhausting than you think it's going to be. Even when it's also very fun. I also I brought my computer because I was like, I'm going to work on Cleat Cute while I'm on tour, which is not happening because my brain does not work.
Maybe you're watching the playoffs tomorrow.
Maybe while I'm watching the playoffs. Yeah, so I have some time. I get to Chicago tomorrow, and the event's not till Monday, and I plan to sleep for the whole time. Chicago is near me. I've been there before. I don't have to run around doing fun things. I have often get to see the people who I like who live there. So if I miss them this time, that's fine. I am just going to stay in my hotel room and sleep the whole time. Is mostly. But thank you for asking.
Yes. You mentioned your friend Christina Tucker, who is an amazing writer, and she writes like the most fun recaps of like queer storylines, like on like the morning show. And she's very emotionally invested in the Juliana Margulies Reese Witherspoon pairing.
Of course.
Everyone should be. So I'm curious for you, is there like a TV queer couple right now that you are like shipping to that level of investment?
Okay. So the question is about Christina Tucker, who I don't think is watching, but I really hope she is. I think she would love being spoken about, especially being spoken about when no one can see her. So she doesn't actually have to feel the attention, but she still gets it. Yeah, Christina writes for Autostraddle and writes recaps for the morning show. And the question was about if I have any TV couples that I ship enough, that I'm that invested in as Christina is, and some people from the morning show. And I do just feel like this does not answer your question, but I just feel like you should know that Christina and I became friends by writing smut in each other's DMs for the morning show. That's very important for everyone to know. It's the best way to make friends with someone. Gosh, I am trying to think. I'm not watching as much TV as I used to. I don't know. My problem is also that, as evident, if anyone has figured out the fandom that Mistakes Were Made is from, I really like non-canon queer couples for some reason. So like Juliana Margulies, Reese Witherspoon from the morning show, I'm like, I don't care. How does Jennifer Aniston feel about Reese Witherspoon? So yeah, I tend to lean toward the I obviously very much appreciate that there are canon queer stories, first of all. But I like to make them myself. So I like to, decide these two people are in love, and give myself exactly what I want in writing a fic out, rather than be like, okay, a different writer made a different choice and I hate it, or anything like that. So yeah, I feel like I do tend to lean more into the non-canon ones. So I can't think of anyone off the top. Okay. Thank you, wife. My wife is here. There's a show called, I was gonna be like, oh my God, I can't swear which one. Obviously I have two. We're literally talking about the Milf book. I don't know what. There's a show called Kevin Can Fuck Himself. It only has 2 seasons. You don't realize that it's really gay. It turns out, having read an interview from the creator after watching the series finale, they also don't realize that it's really gay, but it's like really gay. It's my brain exploded when I read, I was like, they know what they did here, right? They know what they did. And I went and read this interview, and it's just like, oh, you never see like two unattached women who are like, being friends forever. And I'm like, what are you talking? Like, that's not what happened on your show. But anyway, it's also like separate from it being very gay. It has Annie Murphy from Schitt's Creek. Thank you. And it's a sitcom and also a drama. So she is married to a really obnoxious man, and from his point of view, it's like a comedy sitcom where like, oh, we make fun of the wife who's so annoying, and from her point of view, it's like horrific. And they do this all on the same set, same costumes, like different lighting, basically. I think different lighting, maybe they change costumes, but definitely different lighting. And so like and there's a laugh track for the sitcom one, and you're always really embarrassed when you laugh at one of the jokes from the sitcom one, and then it switches to her point of view, and you're just like, oh, this is bad. It's so interesting. It's very well done. And yeah, if you're not fully into it at the beginning of the first season, just watch the whole first season, and then you realize how gay it gets. And then the second season's also excellent. So thank you, wife, for pointing out Kevin can fuck himself. So good. Do we have any online questions? Jeez. Well, they're set. Oh, the question was if the main characters from both of our books met, what would happen? Like both of our books, or okay. It's yours is set in when?
It's Tulsa, Oklahoma in like 2013.
Yeah.
But like my protagonist just loves love. So I think that if they're happy and they're having a good time, then like she's there celebrating. She's like, when's the wedding? Can I plan it? Personally.
Cassie's gonna be rude, but that's not like unique to
they're
your
they're gonna have some clashes on
That's
beliefs
just,
and weddings and marriage for sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I will say that in terms of my own in terms of mistakes were made and something to talk about, sometimes I write when I'm stuck on writing, I will write something that like I know isn't going to go in any book that exists. Like I'm not going to put it in. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, that was good. I'm going to figure out a way to put it in. But this one, I really don't have a way to put it in. I wrote, so something to talk about, if for those of you who haven't read it, it starts with a picture taken of a boss and assistant on the red carpet where everyone decides that they're dating from that photo. And so I've written Cassie and Aaron, where Cassie like comes like barging into Aaron's office with her laptop, and she's like, I knew Joe Jones was a lesbian. Look at these pictures. And talks about how like it even like sort of makes fun of like, well, they're basically us. Like, there's a huge age gap, and like clearly, obviously, they're really hot for each other, but from this picture, which was just a very fun thing to imagine my own characters interacting. I do like to pretend that all of my books take place in the same world. There is a Easter egg in Mistakes Were Made about something to talk about that I think at least one person who's read a advanced copy has noticed. So yeah, I like to pretend that it's all just one world, which is a lot of fun to do.
I have to go back and read it for the Easter egg. How exciting. Okay.
It's very small.
Do we have other audience questions from online?
Write or still write.
The question was if either of us still write fan fiction and what fandoms and ships. I think the last fic that I wrote was a while ago, but was for the morning show, and not for the canon couple, but the non-canon couple on that. But I don't write it that often because again, I'm not finished with my book.
What? I have not been a fan fiction writer previously. However, when I was growing up, a best friend and I, we did not call it this at the time, but we were basically writing fan fiction about ourselves.
Love that.
We called it soap operas, where we would just like write ourselves a couple of years older and much more interesting and exciting.
Did
and,
you
like,
know you were queer then?
No.
Because I love the idea. I love the idea of being like, oh, for the story, there's a hot girl.
Just, yeah.
Not that but just for the soap opera.
Yeah, high school Susie's doing really exciting things.
Yeah.
So she's, yeah.
Not me, but
Yeah.
for the story. Love that.
Any audience questions?
Jeez.
The question was, what is your favorite book growing up?
That's hard. I unfortunately, as I talked about sort of the idea that like romance is trashy or guilty pleasure, I was sort of raised with that point of view. So I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to read romance, which is why I got into fan fiction. Because like romance has 100% always been my thing, but I thought it wasn't supposed to be. So I just read and wrote romantic fan fiction instead, not recognizing that was like still this. My mom didn't know about it, so she couldn't tell me it was trashy. So, gosh, but I should have thought about this more. Okay, I'm gonna have to. I'll think about it and tell you later. No, that's you. I'm sorry, but no. The question was, are there any other genres I'm particularly a fan of? And honestly, like once I got into romance, I am not 100% sure I've read a book outside of romance. I think I've read like a fantasy because a friend wrote it, sort of thing, and it was gay. But yeah, no, I just, and not only like it's not even just romance. I'm like it. Contemporary romance is where I am and where all of those 17 ideas in the spreadsheet are. It's just what I love. And as I said earlier, like there's too many books in the world for you to waste time reading ones you don't really care about. So yeah, I'm just romance through and through. What about you?
I'm a Gemini, so I read everything. I can't help myself. I read like some weird science deep down the rabbit hole. I read, some space operas. I read it all.
I'm a Pisces, so I just cry a lot and have a lot of feelings. So I read romance.
I did want to ask, if you're into astrology, what are signs of our main characters here
Yes. I have to remember. Erin is an Aquarius, which is both for real reasons where like the traits of an Aquarius fit her, and because her birthday is literally in the book. So I had to it had to be then. And Cassie's an Aries. And I think I did an Instagram live with Andrea Hanna, who knows way more about astrology than I do, who's also an author and an amazing person you guys should check out. And I think I figured out that Erin was also an Aquarius rising, because I was sure she was going to ask me on our Instagram live, like what like the big three of the characters were. And I was desperately trying to figure it out like a half hour before it started. And then she never asked me. But I also did that like a totally normal human being. I did that by being like, okay, well, how old is she turning this? I mean, at this part in the book. So she would be born in this year. And like, I put it all in a birth chart for her. And like, there were two options because I didn't have a specific date of birth for her, just like the end of January. And like, and then does that matter at all?
No, it
does
is
not.
good.
But
It's
I
good.
do believe it's a double Aquarius.
And it's a good pairing. It's like air sign and fire sign. They balance each other.
I know nothing about
They're compatible.
astrology.
You happened into a great pairing.
This is-
They're
so-
destined for success.
Actually using astrology for characters specifically is something that I do like to do, like as part of my process, sort of in the same way that I would use any, I was gonna say Myers-Briggs, but that's like racist and terrible, but just anything that I can, like an Enneagram, is that how you say it? Where I can look at like what traits somebody might have. So if I have a character in mind and then I'm like looking through the signs and I'm like, oh, okay, like, yeah, she's similar to this. And then you're like, here's their faults. And I'm like, thank you, because I needed some, because my characters have never done anything wrong in their lives when I first come up with them. So yeah, so that's one of the ways sort of that both I use to get to know my characters better, and I use as a procrastination tactic to not write my book. Grace in Cleat Cute is a Virgo, if anyone wondered, when that book comes out, eventually when I finish it. I know that much, but it's not done.
Excellent. Do we have time for one more question? Yeah. Do we have any in the house for our final question? No pressure or anything.
Way in the back.
Yeah.
The question is there a job that one of the characters in our books has that we would want to have if like it didn't, like it doesn't matter if we couldn't do it? And I will say no, because I do not dream of labor. there is no dream job. I mean, as I said, writing is a job now. But yeah, no, anything else that I don't want to do anything. And I don't want to have to write for a job. I enjoy writing and I like it when people give me money for it. But I don't want to have to, because no, boo labor.
I don't think that I would want any of their jobs for either my book that's out or that's coming up next. They all sound terrible. Good luck to them.
But like the cake decorator, and that doesn't sound, I mean, it sounds terrible, like in
I'm a
being kicked out of the, like, being fired for being gay part, but
yeah. I'm like a passably good home baker.
It takes no effort for you. Like, you don't have to, you just
yeah, it's like relaxing and fun
okay.
when I do it just like for fun. But I think if I were somewhere getting yelled at because the fondant wasn't exactly the right shade of teal, I would probably hate it.
That's a good point.
So maybe in the same lane as dreaming of
do
labor.
not dream of labor.
Yeah. But a great question. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Meryl. This was a lot of fun. And
thank
everybody,
you.
if you haven't read Mistakes Were Made, you are in for a real treat.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone, for watching online. And thank you to East City for having us.
Okay, hello. So we are now going to transition to our signing line portion. If you would like to purchase a book, all the books are upstairs. You can buy it upstairs and come back down here. If you are willing and able to help put your chairs aside, we would appreciate that. And then if we can have the line start right in front of our world religion section, and going back towards the stairs, and we will get this signing line on the road.